Buongiorno everyone, welcome back to the Magpie Channel TV. I'm back in Newcastle after a few days working away in London, so I'm back on YouTube with you lot, giving you a video. And I thought we'd touch upon the international break. I'm not going to bore you with a preview or anything like that. We're going to talk about a unique player for England, a player who's on the verge of making his debut, potentially tonight. England play Italy, and then they play Germany on Monday. He's expected to make his debut, probably off the bench, in one or two of those games, and it is Brentford's Ivan Toney, ex-Newcastle's Ivan Toney. Ivan Toney was at the Toon quite a few years ago now, around the age of 20. He was at Newcastle United. They let him go in 2018. There's mixed reports about this one. Apparently there's one article that says Rafa Benitez let him leave on a permanent when he was on loan spells at Peterborough United, and there's other reports which wouldn't surprise if they were true, which is apparently that when Rafa Benitez joined Newcastle United as manager back then, he asked, is there any players I should know about that are on loan? Is there any good young talent we've got here at the club? And whoever he asked quickly said, oh, young talent, this club, no chance. Nobody told them that Ivan Toney was at the Toon. Apparently, this is how one story goes, where it says that Rafa was unaware of Ivan Toney being on loan at the time and how good he could potentially be. Now, whichever one of those is true, it doesn't really matter, because he left Newcastle. He left Newcastle back then and he made his way back up the ranks into inevitably now the England national team, where he's looking at getting a place at the World Cup in Qatar this winter. Now the World Cup's only a couple of months away, so Toney being in the squad before that, this is the last two games before the lads set off to Qatar this winter. So it's looking likely, it's looking good for Ivan Toney to be involved in Gareth Southgate's travelling team. So it's a big moment for him. It's a big chance for him to impress, I'm sure, in training this week and in the games on Friday night and Monday night. But just quickly, I want to obviously make this more Newcastle United orientated, since that is the channel, since that is the majority of the audience. And it's a big one, really. You know what I mean? It's kind of, should Newcastle United re-sign Ivan Toney? Will they sign Ivan Toney? And should they have kept him? What we'll do is we'll start off in the past then. Should Newcastle have kept Ivan Toney? Well, the easiest, obvious answer for that, looking at his career progression now, is yes. Yes, they should have kept him. However, he wouldn't have really had this trajectory. It's hard to say where he would be right now if he had stayed at Newcastle. He could have just faded away into the midst of distractions at Newcastle and not putting the effort in and probably going out too much as a young'un and not grafting hard enough. Ivan Toney himself admitted in an interview this week that the knockback from Newcastle is what built his career. The realisation that he wasn't going to make it in the Premier League with Newcastle or with another team, and he had to start from fresh at Peterborough United, was a massive wake-up call. We know he's 18, 19, 20, floating around Newcastle, giving it Billy Big Bollocks on a few grand, thinks he's going to be the next big thing, makes the odd Premier League appearance here and there, off the bench, gets a sniff. Niall Ranger springs to mind. Niall Ranger. Ivan Toney could have easily been another Niall Ranger and just faded away into the darkness, really. And just, you know, too many dominoes, too many late nights playing FIFA, too many girls or boys, too many distractions, too many nights out. You know what I mean? All of that, spunking your money, yeah, all goes to your head. We've seen it a million times before. That could have easily been Toney. But being, you know, cascaded from Newcastle, told he's not good enough, sent out on loan, was the wake-up call that he needed, and that is what gave him a kick up the arse. He says he went to Peterborough, saw the facilities there, saw the big blokes that he was around, a bit more, you know, old school, and that is what signalled the refresh, the restart button in his career, was going to Peterborough and having to build back up, realising, fuck, I'm in League One here, I'm at smaller stadiums, I'm in smaller incomes, smaller finances, smaller facilities, everything's shitter, basically, and he's thought he's had a taste. He's had a taste of Premier League action. Not the best for Newcastle. Our facilities weren't much better at the time than bloody Peterborough's, I'd imagine. But he still liked it. He was still in and around better players and whatnot. You know, you've got Rafa Benitez there, for crying out loud, you know. So it's a bit different. Fair enough. You've got to respect Ivan Toney's work rate and how he has built himself back up from that rejection to now. Premier League with Brentford, did unbelievable with Brentford last season and this season. So to get that, it's sort of an England chance, and he's got Callum Wilson to thank as well. Callum Wilson's injuries, I think Wilson would be in that squad if it wasn't for injuries. Where you say that, maybe Gareth would have been thinking, nah, he's too injury prone, but Wilson started the season with a bang, and yeah, he obviously got injured, hasn't made it. Wilson said in his own podcast with Antonio this week that he believes he'd be on that plane. He would be playing these games this weekend if he was fit. And that's a good point. You know, he had already played for England before. It's a big one. There's always a big player that stands out for World Cup squads, isn't there? You go back to Theo Walcott when Sven Goran included that 17-year-old. Mad decision. There's always one where it's like, oh, he's taking him. I think Ivan Toney will be that one this year. And I don't think it's that mad. It's just because he hasn't made his debut for them yet. But because he's such a good option, a different option, he brings such a different stance to England's team. He's a plan B. He's aggressive. He's good on the board. He's good in the air. He's great at link-up play. Grafts his arse off for the team. I think he's quality. And we'll get on to the other question now, which was, should Newcastle re-sign him? Will they re-sign him? Well, first of all, should they? Again, the answer is yes, for me. You look at his stats. Let's just get his stats up now. Actually, you look at them from the last couple of seasons for Brentford in the Premier League. We all knew he could do it in the Championship and the lower levels. His Championship record was outstanding in 2020-21. He had 33 goals in 48 matches, 10 assists. And in the Premier League, his first year back last season, 5 assists, 12 goals, 33 matches. This season he's already started on serious smoke, including one of these was a hat-trick, mind, but what a hat-trick it was, especially the free kick. 2 assists, 5 goals, 7 matches. So he's showing he can do it at the highest level. Will he? Well, he's got a chance to show it this weekend against the Italians and the Germans. Like I say, his overall play is outstanding, so should they sign him? Definitely. We actually did try and sign Ivan Toney this summer. We inquired about Ivan Toney. Eddie Howe was a fan. Eddie Howe wanted Ivan Toney this summer. We inquired about him very early doors, actually, as soon as the Ekitike deal fell through. Calvert-Lewin and Ivan Toney were on that list, but Calvert-Lewin's injury problems were a write-off. And Ivan Toney, the money was a write-off. Newcastle inquired for Ivan Toney from Brentford for around 35 million as a starting bid, looking to rise to maybe 40 to 45 million. The first call we got off Brentford was £55 million for Ivan Toney. That was a starting place. That wasn't even going to be enough to sign him. You would have been looking at 60 plus add-ons for Ivan Toney, I think, easily. Now you look at it and you probably think, again, people think it's mad, but it's not, because that's the money in football now. That's the going rate. He's English. He's 26. He's got his best years ahead of him. He's on the form of his life. For Brentford, no disrespect, actually decent side Brentford, actually, you know, they're probably going to finish mid-table again, but Thomas Frank, good coach. But what I'm saying is, the money that they're going to want for him, he's so important to them. Obviously they're going to want that much money, and for his age and everything, it makes sense. That money, he's probably worth around 40 odd, like we were going to pay. But you take into account inflation, cost of living, do you know what I mean? It's going to be 60 odd million, it really is. So I wouldn't have thought that was that bad. And he goes to the World Cup this winter, plays well. That's 60 million. We're looking at an absolute steal now, because he'll be 100 million plus if he has a good World Cup. Like probably 80, 85 with add-ons to 100, like easily. That's how mad it is. So it's a one of those where, do you go for it? They don't want to be held to ransom. They end up saying Isak, who again is younger, really highly rated. But Isak could play on the wing, like we'll probably see him do now when Wilson comes back. So should Newcastle sign him? Yes. Will they sign him? The price tag might be too much next summer. It was too much this summer. But with revenue waiting, if your whole new summer window, I think Newcastle will sign Ivan Toney. I think he will end up back at Newcastle United. I think they'll try and sign him next summer. I really do. I think they'll look at it now, the owners and Eddie Howe and everyone else will realise truly that they can't rely on Wilson to be a number 9. He can't carry that number 9 shirt anymore. Yes, they've signed Isak, but like I said, he can play out wide. They need another starting striker who's going to hit the ground running and score goals. I can't think of that many better than Ivan Toney, to be honest, in terms of Premier League as well. He is ready. He's not a risk like Isak is, or if you sign someone else from abroad, he's not a risk. Isak, he's done well so far, great, but Toney, you know what you're getting. You know what you're getting. And you know you can produce week in, week out in this league. So that'll be a big game changer, a big decider in whether or not they pump up the money for an Ivan Toney. I reckon if he has a good World Cup, you're looking at 70, 80 million. Easily. Could easily be three not 3 figures, 100 million. I was thinking in my head, 100M I had written down there. 6 figures, not even 6 figures. I've got that wrong again. Loads of figures. Me maths is shite. But basically, he's worth fuckloads of money. You know what I mean? He could be 100 million. You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to fucking say. Is that he's going to be a lot of money after that World Cup. A lot of money. But I think it would make sense for him to come back to Newcastle. I think he would love it. I mean, he was asked in an interview this week, you know, how do you feel about it? What's your thoughts on being let go from Newcastle? And he said, look, if I was there at the time and I was in charge of a 20-year-old Ivan Toney and choosing whether or not to keep him or sell him, I would have probably sold him. So it's nice and honest by Ivan Toney. That's what he's been all week in these press conferences, very honest. And I think that's great of him to say that. You know, he said himself, I would have let myself go because my head wasn't right. His mindset wasn't right. He wasn't professional enough. Let's be honest, he's 20. He's 20 in Newcastle. You can't blame the lad. So he's switched on now. He's 26 now. He said there's no hard feelings. It's a great club. For me, that signals that he knows we were in from last summer and he knows they could be back in from next summer. So he's keeping his options open. He'll want to move from Brentford next year, definitely. He'll want to start, whether it be European football or not, or playing for a big club like in Newcastle or West Ham. Like, he'll be wanting to make that next step up, I think. So you could see him in black and white again. I would definitely re-sign him. All right, let us know what you think in the comments below about Ivan Toney. Would you take him to the World Cup? Would you take him back to Newcastle? Anything else you want to say, pop it in there. Subscribe, like, and enjoy yourselves.